And I guess so. Coming from
Uh,
that first race to now, so you've had a top 10 finish in Superbike too, right? Where do you remember that day at all?
no, I think in Superbike, I think my best is either an 11th or 12th. Um, we'll call it fortune, where maybe a lot of the really fast guys struggled with gravity and physics a little bit, and it kind of helped me move my way forward a little bit. Like my bike, the bike that I race on is a stock 1000 bike. It's not, I compete in Superbike, but it's not a legit Superbike by a
Yeah.
long shot. It's all the normal parts that you can buy from any of the vendors. I mean, Thermos Man does his own little black magic stuff in the forks and shocks for me. Um, but for the most part, it's a really unmodified bike. That's the really nice thing about the big bikes is back to they already make so much power. It's not really a lot of power. It's when you bring up the big teams, and it's like, oh, they have so much money. Even if you had all the money in the world to throw the best parts at any one motorcycle, the most important thing, and this is something that I've struggled with, is having the people around you that know how to extract those things
Yeah.
from those parts. Like the ZX10, it's the first motorcycle I've ever had that has electronics. Um, I have a very rudimentary understanding of how they're used. I don't use them the way probably a lot of the bigger teams use them. I don't even know if the electronics on my bike would operate in the way like, oh boy, we'll get really nerdy. Um, so the electronics on my bike, wheel spin and slide has to occur. Like it happens. So like you'll be going through a corner, the bike will start to slide and it'll go past a certain threshold and the electronics will go in to rein that back in, which will make
Hmm.
the bike, kind of straighten back out. But what then happens often is you get like a stick slip condition where the chassis is loading, sliding, unloading, electronics stepping back in, and it makes the bike get really unruly and crazy. I've had some very unique perspectives of like, let's say turn one at MotoAmerica where I crashed, but I got a really good viewing spot to watch the legit superbikes come through. The way that the way it appears to me that they get the electronics and chassis to work together, where my electronics are kind of on or off, theirs are like a dimmer switch. They can
Yeah.
come into a corner, and as the bike starts to slide, you can hear the electronics phase in and phase out. And never mind that just making the bike uh, hook up and drive better. You can watch the chassis, and the chassis is just perfectly level across the pavement. It's not bucking, it's not sawing, like it just makes it look like it just floats through the corner. And all of that floating is what equates to time. Have you ever been into drag racing of any kind?
Not officially, unofficially, of course.
Yeah, yeah.
So when I was a kid, I built little Honda race cars, little four-cylinder Honda race cars, and was super awesome at drag racing front wheel drive cars because that's what you do when you're a kid. And when you go to the drag strip, one of the most important things in doing a really, really good time is your 60 foot.
Yeah.
When I'm on my bike and I get to exit a corner with the legit super bikes, we're kind of coming out of a dig, coming out of a hole. The way their electronics, it's a multitude of things, but the way their bike is able to produce grip the way that mine does not equates to that initial 60-foot jump. Once we're up to speed and going, they're only like marginally faster in a straight line than my stock bike. But the way it does everything from that slowest point in the corner, we'll just call it, to the 60 feet out of the corner, the amount of distance that they open just in that short time frame, every corner. You go to a track, let's say that's 3/10. You've got, I'm terrible at math, 10 corners. That's 3 seconds.
Yeah. And you're doing that
It's
every lap.
And they're able to do stuff like that lap after lap after lap. But again, they have the crew of guys that are able to look at it, manipulate the chassis and electronics together so that they actually work together. Probably a rider coach to a degree. Again, I don't know what actually goes on in the big teams, but just seeing what I see on track, it's really wild what the proper superbikes can do.
Do you know if because say like in MotoGP, for example, they have like the ECUs that are like tapped into the GPS, and then they're able to make changes in specific corners and things like that. Have you heard of anyone using stuff like that in a moto, or is that like illegal tech, or too far out?
Well, see, like, so with the first year we raced Stock 1000, I think me and my buddy, we were on our way home from Indianapolis. We were like, hey man, how much are the Superbike electronics? We wanted to see, like, just seeing how well they worked. It was like, what would it actually cost to build, a Superbike?
Yeah.
The computer was like 10 grand. So I
Yeah.
don't know the like finite part, like little rules and designations for what is allowed, but like they do have, like, you're only allowed this software version, and when you have that software version, it's only going to give you certain parameters. I don't know what that has in regards to MotoAmerica, but I have heard about what they do in GP with that stuff, but I don't know what the rules are for MotoAmerica for that.
I'm pretty sure I've heard in the what the heck is it called? That MotoAmerica like TV series behind the scenes thing? Like
Yeah.
whatever it's called. I can't remember. I'm pretty sure I've heard the attack guys and even the Westby guys talking about how they could adjust engine braking in different corners.
Yeah.
So they didn't have just a set level for the whole track. They could adjust it corner by corner. So, Schultz would come in and be like, hey, it's out of control into 2. And they'd be like, all right, dial down the engine braking into 2. So I think they've got some pretty damn trick stuff going on in there.
Okay. I've heard it done 2 ways. In regards to MotoGP, like, again, like, this is stuff that I read years ago. I have no idea what they're currently doing, but they could do it GPS wise, or they could also do it timing wise. And the problem with GPS is, like, have you ever sat in a stationary and looked at a GPS? Like, it'll show you 3 miles an hour and your position will kind of move around. So GPS is kind of inconsistent. What they'll do is they'll run a timer, and it resets every time they go over start finish, because it knows that between here and here they should be going into this corner, and then at this point they should be going into that corner. Do you remember the race Valentino Rossi and Casey Stoner at Laguna, where Rossi just kept stuffing them and stuffing them and stuffing them and stuffing them?
Mm-hmm.
What he was doing was he was screwing up the timing to the electronics on the bike.
Okay.
So that
Wow.
it wouldn't react the way that it was supposed to, because he wasn't in the places he was supposed to be when it was supposed to run at a certain setting. So, like, I've heard that's more consistent than the GPS thing. But that's well beyond my means.
We've heard
or
with the
comprehension.
GPS stuff.
That's well behind.
Yeah, that like a rider will high side or something like that, and they'll come back and they'll go, it turns out the GPS was lost, so the bike thought they were in turn 8 or whatever and gave them 2 clicks of traction control when they were actually in turn 7 and they needed 8 clicks or whatever. So yeah, that GPS has some problems too.
Yeah, that's insane. But I guess I find comfort in the fact that you really can't just take a freaking production bike out of the dealership, right? And then you can go race at the professional level with that thing after you put a little bit of money into it, of course, but you can still take a mostly bought bike, right, and make it competitive. So it's not all BS coming from the
There,
manufacturers, right?
no,
Yeah.
no, like that's
Yeah.
um. So unlike the electronics and like that kind of stuff, the ZX10, like I said, was my first bike with electronics. Um, you can play with engine braking electronically, not corner specific, but you can go in and play with a lot of the different settings within it. You can play with the ETV maps. That's most of the motorcycles are dumbed down. Like what you ask for at the grip is not what the actual
Yeah.
throttle bodies do. It
Mhm.
was something that I actually struggled with a little bit when I first got on the ZX10 because I'd be mid corner and have the thing almost at full grip because the throttle bodies were so dumbed down that I was waiting on the
Mhm.
bike power. Like